Okay, let's talk about keyframes. So a keyframe in animation and filmmaking is a drawing that defines the starting and ending points of any smooth transition. The drawings are called frames because their position in time is measured in frames on a strip of film. A sequence of keyframes defines which movement the viewer will see, whereas the position of the keyframes on the film, video, or animation defines the timing of the movement. Because only 2 or 3 keyframes over the span of a second do not create the illusion of movement, the remaining frames are filled with what are called in-betweens. Now let's see what that means in terms of 3D. So I have a cube here in the scene, and I want to create some animation. The first thing I'm going to do is just move this cube out a little bit, and I'm on frame 0, and we've got the record panel over here, and this is our power slider. So right now we have 0 to 90, so we've got 90 total frames. And what I want to do is I want to animate this cube coming from out here into frame. So the first thing I'm going to do is to put a keyframe at 0. So I'm going to come over here to this button, which is Record Active Objects, and the cube is active right now. I'm going to click that button, and you'll notice a few things. One, we have a keyframe now right here at frame 0. And 2, you'll notice that in the coordinate panel of the cube object, we now have these red dots, whereas before they were all gray. So that indicates that now they have keyframe data at frame 0. So now what I want to do is I want to move forward in time. So I'm going to move all the way to frame 90. I'm going to grab my cube on the Z-axis and pull that into frame. Now you'll notice something else over here in the coordinate panel. All of these red dots turn into circles with holes in the middle. And that indicates that there is animation data on these, but we're no longer on a keyframe. And also that the Z position is the one that actually carries the new animation data. So now, in order to set a keyframe here, I'm going to press this button again and watch these because they're going to change as soon as I do that. I click that, and now they all turn to red dots again because we are on a keyframe. Now, if I move off of that keyframe, you can see that we have all of our red dots with the circles in the middle again, indicating that we're no longer on a keyframe. So let's just play this and take a look at what we have now. So we have a smooth animation going through, and we basically have 2 keyframes. Now, there's something else you'll notice, and it's the way that this cube is moving. So it's starting out slow, it's picking up speed, and then it ends slow again. So it's easing in and it's easing out. And this is a default behavior of Cinema 4D when you're animating. This is what we call smooth interpolation. Now, something else that I want you to notice is the motion path of the object, indicated by this line with the little dots on it. And if you'll notice, the dots are closer at the beginning and end of the path, and they're further apart in the middle. This also indicates the speed of the object. So the closer the dots are, the slower it's moving. The further apart the dots are, the faster the object is moving. Now, this behavior can be changed in what's called the F-curve manager, which we will go into in a later movie. But for now, I just wanted you to get an idea of the basic animation motions here in Cinema 4D. Okay, let's run over to another animation that I have set up. And let's just play that. Okay, so in this animation, we have multiple keyframes. And you can see that, again, we're starting out slow, we're picking up speed, and then we're ending slow again. So if I wanted to add another keyframe in here, let me just stop this. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 keyframes. And also on the animation path, you can see that the keyframes are indicated by these big dots as opposed to the smaller dots. So if I want to change this particular keyframe, I can just land on that in the power slider. And then I could say, move this over and down a little bit. Then I can come over to my Record Active Objects button, and you'll see how the animation path has changed. So now if we play that, got a little different animation now. In addition, I could come, let's say, to 10, and I could change the position of the object, and I could record a new keyframe at that point. So now we go back to the beginning, click the play button. We have something a little different again. Another way that we can set keyframes, besides using the Record Active Objects button, is to do that in the Attribute Manager of the object. So let's do this. I can delete keyframes by simply clicking on the keyframe, hitting delete on the keyboard. I can also go to the object. I can right-click, go to Animation, and say Delete Track. And I could do that for position, scale, and rotation. So now I have no keyframes on my object. Click play, nothing's going to happen. So let me go over here to 0. I'm going to click on my position. I'm going to Control or Command click and set a keyframe by clicking on that. Then I'm going to come over here to 20. I'm going to move my object somewhere like this. Again, I'm going to come over to position. I'm going to Control or Command click, and I just set another keyframe. So that's an alternate way, instead of using the Record Active Objects button, to record keyframes here in Cinema 4D. So let's get rid of these keyframes just by hitting delete on the keyboard. And one last thing I would like to show you about using the Record Active Objects button. If we click on the cube and we click on the Record Active Objects, you're going to notice that we get keyframes in position, scale, and in rotation. Now, let me just hit Control-Z. The more keyframes that you have, the more complicated your animation can get, especially when you need to go into the F-curve and make adjustments. So if you know that you only need to record keyframes in the position, then you can turn some of these off. You can turn off parameter, rotation, and scale by clicking these. And then whenever you click on the Record Active Objects button, you're only going to get keyframes in the position. So then I could come out here, move it, record it again, and I'm only getting keyframes here in the position. And this makes for a tighter, cleaner animation that will be much easier to edit. Okay, so that's the basics of keyframes and the power slider here in Cinema 4D.